I'd like to welcome Blair Mantin, Senior Vice President of Sands and Associates, the largest trustee in BC. Welcome, Blair. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Mark. My pleasure to be here.
So, Blair, before we get started, I'd like to mention a few stats that I've been reading. So, nearly 6 million Canadians have applied for this income support.
Mhm.
Lenders have deferred nearly 600,000 mortgages. And even before this happened, there was a lot of talk about the majority of households maybe being a paycheck or two away from insolvency. Now, hearing all of that, what's your feeling about what's going on right now?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for the question. So, there's a huge amount of fear, of uncertainty, just of discomfort that everyone's feeling in the economy right now. And if you're indebted, you obviously you feel it 10 times over. It's not the case that people were in great shape and then suddenly this pandemic hit and, it just really knocked us. In the province of BC in July this year, there was a 35% increase year over year in the number of people filing for bankruptcies or consumer proposals. So we were already trending down, a pretty dangerous curve, unfortunately, with people being really overextended. And now I think we've just seen that it's going to force a lot of folks who are on the bubble, so to speak, to really put them into an untenable situation. So what we're seeing a lot is, people calling us just not sure what they should be focused on. So, should they be focused on paying their debt? Should they be focused on their living expenses? What's going to happen next? So we're having a lot of discussions, trying to calm people down on
Right.
what they should do in the short term.
So let's talk about that. Based on what's going on right now, and if you've lost your job, and maybe you've applied for the support, what would your suggestion be to people? Like, what should they be doing right now if they're having a bit of a tough time and they're struggling?
Yeah, I think, first off, take a deep breath. So understand, this too shall pass. We've faced, great challenges as Canadians before. We'll get through this as well. But also understand, you've really got to set some priorities, and paying your debts, I don't think should be the top of that priority list. So I think if what you need to do is you need to sit down and look at your budget as of now and just see, do you have enough money coming in to meet your basic everyday needs? And if you're someone who's, been laid off, you're getting the $2,000 a month from the COVID benefit, living in a place like Vancouver, that's going to be tough, to make ends meet, excuse me, and then to have any extra money left over. So you have to look at what the benefits are available, but also consider that they're taxable benefits too. So, you might, if you spend all the COVID benefit and you don't put any money away for taxes, you might be having a bit of an issue next year. So I think first off, look at the budget and see, can you meet your everyday needs? Second off, if it looks like you're not going to be able to maintain your minimum payments on your debts, there's really two things you need to do, and they're both absolutely critical, Mark. So number one is you need to contact your creditors. You need to just let them know, and you're not going to be the first call they're getting today.
Right. Yeah.
Let them know, you're having trouble, you need some payment deferrals, so on and so forth. That's going to stop the collection calls. That's going to buy you a bunch of time. But keep in mind, they're probably still going to charge interest. I've only seen a couple banks that aren't charging interest. I think Van City is a great one, but otherwise you're still going to be having some interest to pay at the end of the day, but you do want to communicate with your creditors. The second thing, and I can't say this, I can't overstate the importance of this, is if you think you're going to be missing payments on your debts and you bank with the same institution, you need to change that daily bank account. You need to do it very soon. The reason for that is banks have what's called the right of offset. So if you've got a minimum payment due and you don't make that minimum payment, any money in your account could be seized to make those payments, whatever's overdue or in breach of the cardholder agreement. This might happen the day before your rent is due, your groceries are needed to be bought, and it could leave you with no money at all. So even though the government says these emergency benefits can't be seized, that's right, they can't be intercepted, but as soon as they're in the bank, they're the same as cash on hand, and they
Right.
could be taken if you owe that same bank some money. So communicate with your creditors, but more importantly, don't bank where you have any debt. It's a best practice for always, and it's definitely a requirement for right now.
So basically, you're saying if I have any uh, payments that are coming out of my bank automatically, and I get that money and it goes into the same account that those payments come from, it's a free for all when that money goes in there unless I move it. Like if I owe money and it's due for a direct withdrawal on the 2nd of May, if
Yep.
that $2,000 comes in there and I haven't communicated or I haven't been able to get hold of them, it could be taken.
Well, exactly, Mark. It's that, but it actually goes a little bit deeper in that, okay, that's a pre-authorized payment and you were expecting it. But let's say you don't have any pre-authorized payments. You've got a card with Big Bank and you've also got a bank account with Big Bank, and you've never given them the authorization to take out your minimums every month. As soon as you start to miss payments, they've got the right of offset, which means they can offset your assets against the amount of debt that they're owed, which means you don't have to have the pre-authorization. You could find money seized from your account without you having any knowledge about it or any approval.
Right. Okay. Good advice. And then let's talk a little bit about, these things shall pass. Obviously, we're all optimistic. Uh, what's your thought moving forward in terms of advice that you would give to someone if they're having a tough time? Maybe they've lost their job. Maybe it'll come back. I mean, what do you think? What are the thoughts for you in terms of what someone should do?
I think in the short term, as I've said, it's really, take a deep breath, realize we're going to get through this, and focus on what's right in front of you. So you've got to pay your rent. Ideally, hopefully your landlord could be a bit flexible if that's a challenge, but your regular expenses, priority. From there, if you do have the ability to maintain your minimum payments, that's never a bad thing, right? You're going to preserve
Right.
your credit rating. You're going to, avoid people making collection calls to you. If you're able to get some deferrals, that's great. But if you're able to afford your necessities and continue to pay your debts, then you should do so. Now, if it's to the point where you have to choose, you can't afford to pay the debts and your necessities, well, of course, you pay the rent, you pay the groceries, so on and so forth. And that's when you need to get some help for your debts.
Right.
So if it's the case, there's no money at all, you couldn't even afford, to file a bankruptcy or to file a proposal where you do a repayment amount for just part of your debts. If there's no money at all for debt repayment, well, then you should just still get some advice. You can phone a trustee. You can understand, well, as of right now, Mark, there's really nothing anybody is at risk for because the courts are shut down.
Right.
So if you can't pay your debts now, no matter how much they threaten you, they can't really hurt you until the courts open back up, and then they can come and take your wages or try to seize assets. So in the short term, if there's just no money for debts, you just need to understand, well, you do what you can. You understand in the future, you're going to have to deal with it when the courts are back open, but in the short term, there's really no potential impact to you. Now, if it's the case there is some money for debts, but not near the amount they want for your minimum payments, and you just know you're not going to get ahead, but you are still earning income, you're able to afford your necessities, that's exactly when you should be reaching out to a licensed insolvency trustee. We can do a great thing called a consumer proposal, where it takes the amount of debt that you have, it stops all the future interest, and it reduces the debt down to what you can afford to repay. So usually it's maybe a third of the debt, maybe a half, maybe a quarter, but this can be an absolute lifesaver. Just about everybody, when I do a consumer proposal, the combined proposal payment on all of their debts is less than what the minimum payments were on even one or two of the debts. So it's just a life changer in terms of your financial viability moving forward. But that's again predicated on you've got enough money to meet your living expenses and you can start to tackle your debts. If you're just struggling to make ends meet, well, you need to put yourself and your family first and put the creditors second.
So if I were to go back to work, I've fallen behind. I don't see myself recovering. I'm kind of struggling, paddling to stay afloat. A call to you would definitely be advised. Plus, it's going to, aside from, doing that restructuring of the debt, it's going to stop all those creditors from calling me.
Yeah, I think, people always wait too long, in my experience, to reach out to someone like a licensed insolvency trustee. The phrase that I hear most often in this role here is, I wish I had made this call sooner. So, everybody's got, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have a lot more time right now because, a lot of us are working from home, as we can see. I'm not in San Francisco, though I wish I was. Clearly the barbers aren't working either. So, we do have some time. So, we're getting a whole lot of calls now where we're just counseling people, we're just letting them know when things do improve, here's what we can potentially do to help you. But it's also a case you really need to make sure you're not going to step on any minefields now. You're not going to make the wrong decision in the short term that's really going to hurt you, and you're going to really regret it when things get back to normal. And the number one minefield that I've counseled a number of people away from, and I'll do it, many people call me, I'll tell them don't do this, is to cash in your RRSPs.
Right.
So never, never, never cash in your RRSPs to pay debts. If you need to do it to live, okay, pursuant to our earlier discussion, you do what you have to do. But if you're cashing in your RRSPs just to make minimum payments on your debts, or even to try to pay the debts off, first off, there goes your retirement, and odds are you're going to need that money in the future. Second off, there is taxes withheld on that money, so you're not going to get what you thought. And third off, it's federally protected. You would never have to surrender those funds to creditors. The only way creditors would ever have access is if you take the step to cash in those retirement funds. So no matter how dire things get, if you need your RSPs to live, that's great, please do so. But otherwise, for creditor payments, I've never seen a situation where it's the right discussion, or where it's the right decision to cash in RRSPs.
Well, I think that's probably a fact that people don't know, that the RSP is protected. So if they get to that point, not only is the RSP protected, but the other thing that I often hear is that they fear about the credit bureau. Oh, if I go through an insolvency or something like that, it's going to affect my credit. But what I try to explain, and as you know, once you're missing those payments and you go into that R2, R3, R9, whatever, it's bad anyway. And
Yep.
it's not going to be any worse. It's going to be better because it's going to eliminate the debt. It's going to restructure it, smaller payments. And I would say if you're worrying about your credit is your issue, it's already been affected.
Yeah. And, I often have the discussion with my clients, short-term pain for long-term gain.
Right.
You could try to preserve a perfect credit rating and just never have any net worth because all your money goes to payments, or let's take a short-term pain and let's rebuild the credit over time.
Right. Well, this is great info, Blair. I think what I'm hearing you say is number one, communication, obviously, right now. Number two, take care of yourself and your family, and then try to list all your debts and then prioritize. And at the end of the day, once the dust settles, if you find yourself in a situation where you can't get out, a call to you is definitely advisable.
Yeah, I think even in the short term, if you just need help sorting through things, just getting some basic questions answered, just give a call to a licensed insolvency trustee at Sands & Associates. Free to chat, free to meet with us, and we can do everything online now, everything remotely via video or telephone. So even with the pandemic, we're still helping people every day.
Excellent. So what I'll do, Blair, when I upload this, I'll put your phone number, website, all that. So if somebody wants to get hold of you, it's super easy.
That's great. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.